In this video, we're going to start to explore the power of wpDataTables in combination with Formidable Forms. We're going to do SQL queries, and we're going to create a recipe listings table to replace the one we created in Formidable Forms. Hey, it's Tom Thayer here from Tech and Gadgets Reviewed, where we help you learn about all the different technologies and gadgets that we've run into over the years. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe. All the links mentioned in this video will be listed in the description box below. So let's just jump into it. Formidable Forms, wpDataTables, and Woody ad snippets are simply the best foundation to build the type of web application that we're building in this video series. In this video, we're going to use wpDataTables in order to replace the view that we created in the previous video. We're going to use an SQL query along with concatenation in order to create the same type of view, only in a tabular format, and also embed edit buttons into the table. Okay, so let's get into it here. If you remember in the last video, if you haven't seen the last video, then I'd advise that you go back and watch it. But in the last video, we created the view, and it was the recipes listing view. And what we did was we defined a tabular format in here, and we set it up so that we had the recipe name, the image, the dish type, and an action. Okay? And if you recall, we also have these tags. So here's the tags. The interesting thing about these tags is that these numbers also correspond to field IDs in the SQL database table. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace this view, this tabular format here, with a wpDataTable. And how you figure things out is, first of all, you would click on Create a Table, and here where it says Generate a Query to My SQL Database, I'm going to show you what we're going to be querying. We're not going to use this, but it lets you figure out what you should be using, okay? So we're going to click on that, and we're going to look next. So now you can see that the table names start with WPUV underscore, okay? So that's the first thing we need to know. What we're going to be querying against is the FRM item metas, because each table inside of Formidable Forms is defined here in the items, okay? You've got the actual form here, and then the items are each individual entry, but you've also got the metas, which are each individual field. So if I click on that and then add it, you're going to see that it's going to list all the columns. Now, the ID column is a unique ID, okay? The item underscore ID column is the actual entry ID. So if we went back here, let's remove this for a second. If we looked at the FRM items, where is it? Right here. If we look at that, you're going to see that there's an items ID. That is individual per entry that's gone into your table, okay? So that ID actually corresponds to the item ID in the FRM item metas. And the field ID corresponds to the tag ID that I showed you. And the meta value is the actual value that's in that field. So as you can see, we can do a query for a field ID because each field ID is unique as well, okay? Because that's defined inside of the fields. So if you look up here, you're going to see we click on fields and we add it over into here. you're going to see that there's a fields ID, and each one is unique. So each field that you add to any form has its own unique ID. All right, so keep that all in mind. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a table that replaces this view. And we're going to do that by querying these tag IDs, which are actual field IDs. So I will show you how that all works. I'm going to open up another tab here so we can flip back and forth in between things, okay? So now let's go and create a table linked to an existing data source is what we actually want to do. So we're going to click on here, we're going to click on next, and it's going to come up and it's going to ask you to name the table. So we're going to call it recipes listing, much the same as we had in the view. In the input data source, we're going to choose SQL query. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in select item ID, comma, meta value from WP FRM item metas, because that's the name of the table that we're actually querying. So what this is going to do is it's going to bring up the item ID and the meta value for every single field that is stored in the metas table. This is just to show you. So I'm going to click on save, and what you're going to see now is down here, you can see there's all the different fields that we put in the entries, okay? So if I turn around and I put on here field ID, what you're going to see is that we're going to have to scroll over, but you're going to see there's the field IDs that actually correspond to each of these values. So now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to duplicate what we had over here, which is the actual recipe name, the image, and the dish type. The actions we'll get into in a few minutes, but the recipe name is 17, the image is 28, and the description, or the dish type, sorry, is 20. So those are the fields we're going to want. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back here and we're going to say select the item ID, meta value, and field ID, just to begin with, from this, and we're going to put an A on this because we're going to do some joins, and you want to put an A dot, and we're going to go where A dot field ID equals 17. So what that's going to do right now is that is just going to give us the entry, all the entries that exist for the actual recipe name. So if we save that now, what you're going to see is in the table, all we're going to get is the amazing chicken curry, which is exactly what we want. Okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, so we got it working. And the IDs we know we want are 17, 28, and 20. So we've got 17. So what we're going to do is we're just going to keep the meta values, okay? So we're going to go a meta value as recipe name, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to go here and we're going to go inner join. You can do a left join, which is probably wise, because the difference between an inner join and a left join is that if you have a inner join and a value doesn't exist for that actual field that you're going after, it will not show anything. It won't show the recipe name or anything. If you do a left join, it'll just show an empty column along with the rest of the data. So we're going to go inner join, or left join, sorry. And we're going to say B, because B is going to be our, let's make this a little simpler. No, we'll leave it at B. Okay, so we're going to say B on A dot item ID, because we want the same item ID, equals B dot item ID and b.field ID equals, and what did we want next? We wanted the image, so it's 28 equals 28. Then up here we're going to go b.meta value as img. Okay? And then we want to pull in one more, which is 20, which is the dish type. So we're going to go in here and we can just simply copy this now, and we can change this to a C, change all of these to a C, and this becomes 20 because it corresponds to the 20 over here, which is our tag for dish type. And up here we're going to simply go comma c.meta value as dish type. So now if we go and save that, what you're going to see is down here we've got the recipe name, amazing chicken curry. You'll notice that the images come up with a 17. We'll talk about that in a second. And then the dish type is main. Okay? So what we want to do now is we want to see, why did this turn out as a 17? Okay, so the reason that the image actually turned out as a 17 is because Formidable Forms stores the actual path to the image that you uploaded as a post. And they store that inside of the GUID within that post. Why they decided on that, I don't know. You'd have to talk to the developers. So what we actually need to do is we need to do this. We need to go left join wp uv _posts d on d.id equals b.meta value. And the reason we're doing that is because of the fact that the b.meta value contains 17. So what it's referring to is post ID 17 actually contains the path to the image. So now if we go up to here, because we've done a join on the posts, and if we go up to here and we go d.GUID as image and we save it, what you're going to see now is that when we scroll down, the image comes up with a 0 in it. Now the reason for that is because if you click on here and go to the data type, because it found a 17 before, it set itself up as an integer, but it's actually going to be a string. So let's take a peek at it now. If we save it, what you're going to see is there's the actual string of the image of the chicken curry. So the other thing we want to do at this point is we want to change this so that it's not just showing the path to the image. So let's click on here, and if we go to data, you'll notice that wpDataTables actually allows us to say that it's an image. Okay, so if we save that now, you're going to see there's the image. It brought in the image. Now that image is obviously going to be pretty darn big for inside of here, so let's do a little bit of formatting on it. In order to format this up, we're going to want to set this thing so that it's like, I don't know, 100 by 100 or 200 by 200. Actually, we'll settle at 150 by 150. The nice thing about wpDataTables is that they've got the ability to customize, and this is relatively new, as you can see it says new, to actually create custom CSS on a per table basis. Okay, so we're going to go into custom CSS and we're going to add in something for the actual recipe image. So we're going to call it recipe img. Okay? And we're going to simply go like this. We're going to go width, colon, 150 px, height, colon, 150 px. Okay? So now that we've got this recipe image, we're going to save that. And we're going to go back down to our table here. We're going to click on the image. And in the classes, we're going to paste in recipe image. And when we save it, you're going to notice that the actual image still did not change. Now the reason behind this, a lot of people get fooled on this. So what you actually need to do is up in the custom CSS, you want to put IMG here. And when you save it, you're going to see that it has now resized this image. So that's great. We now have our recipe name, our image showing, and our dish type. So let's make this thing look a little bit better, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to make this recipe name. We're going to call this recipe image. All we're doing is changing the headers on this. And we're going to rename this to dish type. Okay? So now that we've got this table in here, you'll notice that we've got other abilities in here to filter on things and so on and so forth. We're going to make this real simple. And we're going to go back up here and we're going to go for display. We're not going to show the title. We don't want that. We're going to allow to collapse. We don't care about the X amount of entries. We don't care about the information block. The pagination we will want, okay? So it's going to be there. It can be hidden. I'm not going to worry about doing advanced filters or sorting at this point. I'm going to leave the search block in place. So let's just save all that, okay? And now what you're going to notice is that it starts to look like a normal table. So what I want to do now is I want to actually go to the header, and I want the background color of the header to be blue, and I want the font color to actually be black. Okay, so we're going to choose that, and we can also go in here and just type in if we want. So if I save that now, what you're going to notice is that it's turning out like this now. So we're starting to get a table that's going to look the way we actually want it to look. Okay? Now, if we want to go for the fonts, we can change font sizes and so on and so forth. So you can see you can change a lot of stuff. But for the sake of this tutorial, I just want to show how we're going to create the actual basic table to replace the one that was inside of Formidable Forms. So the next thing we need to do is we need to add in an action column. So in order to add in an action column, we need to do things a little bit differently, okay? So we're going to go back into Formidable Forms, and we're going to go to Views. Now we're going to go into our view, and we're going to preview it. And if you remember, we did the edit here, you'll notice that when I highlight this, down in the bottom left-hand corner, it shows you what the actual link is. So we're going to copy that link address, okay? And we're going to go back over to the table, and we're going to go into our data source. And if you remember, we were doing this by ID, and like I said, these IDs actually equal the entry ID. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into here, and we're going to put a comma here, and we're going to paste in what we had copied, and we're going to concatenate this. We're going to go concat. We need the whole value here, all the way up to where it says entry equals, and we're going to close that off. We're going to get rid of that. We're going to go comma, okay? And we're going to go a.item ID, because that is the entry ID. We're going to close it and we're going to say as action. Okay? So now when we save it, what you're going to see is down in here, we now have the link, which is the action. Okay? So what we want to do is we want to change that to a URL link, which is what's there right now. Now we don't want that to actually show up as the whole link and stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, we're going to make that link appear as a button, and we're going to simply say edit. And then we're going to save the change. And now you're going to see there's an edit button in there. So now you can see that we have actually created exactly what we had inside of Formidable Forms, but this is a lot more flexible with the wpDataForms. So I'm going to save everything we did. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the pages and we're going to add a new page, and we're going to call it recipes listing. Okay? And inside of here, we're going to click on the visual because we can now. We're going to go to wpDataTables and we're going to choose our recipe listing table and we're going to insert it in there. When we publish that, what we now have, if we preview it, is we have our recipes listing, and there is the actual edit form. Now, obviously, we're going to have to format all this up and so on and so forth. But if I click on the edit now, it's going to take me over and I can update everything. So we'll change this back to simply chicken curry, and I'm going to update it. And the thing about it is we don't want it to say your responses were successfully submitted. Okay? What we want it to do is to go back to that recipes listing. So copy this link address, go to our Formidable form, which is here. We're going to go to settings. On here where it says under general, where it says redirect to URL, we're going to choose that and we're going to paste in that link. We're going to update it. What we're going to do also is we have to go to the form permissions, okay? And on update, we want to redirect to the URL as well. So now that we've updated that, what you're going to find is that if we go to this page and we actually go and look at the recipes listing, so I'm going to go there. If I click on edit, you're going to see that it's now going to go over here. So we'll put back in the amazing chicken curry. And if I scroll down, what's going to happen is when I click on update, it's going to take me back and you'll see that it has changed the amazing chicken curry. So we have now managed to go through and create a wpDataTable, which is fully mobile, can also use queries and do all kinds of stuff. In the next video, I'm going to show you how we can change certain things in here using snippets of code and Woody add snippets. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you in the next.